What's up guys? In this video, I want to give you a really quick overview of three really great talks that I got to see on text analytics, general adversarial networks for reducing bias, and the adoption of R in government departments. If you're new to this channel and you're keen to learn the latest tips, tricks, and tools for working more effectively with data, please hit the subscribe button for weekly videos. So first up, can you do text analytics in R? Yes, you can. So we had this great presentation from Eduardo Cortes, and he is using the tidy text library in R to do text analytics. So he set out to do this test to see what is the attributes of good presentations. So this was inspired and motivated by the fact that he is also part of this other data science speakers group, so data science speakers, where he is looking to improve his own speaking and presentation skills. So really interesting. Of course, being a data scientist, he goes off and he wants to look and see how we can use the data to figure out how to be better at that. And so what he goes off and does is that he starts grabbing data of really famous speeches and talks. Now, the problem here is that there is not necessarily enough data. So what he then goes off and does is that he takes the transcripts as well as a whole bunch of other data from TED Talks. Now, if you search Kaggle, you should be able to find the TED Talk dataset, which has a whole bunch of attributes that come with it that you should be able to also conduct some similar type of analysis. So anyway, what were some of his conclusions? So he ran a few models over the results, and the winning model was a simple logistic regression model with 7 variables. Now, here are kind of some of the 4 key findings that he got from this. So first of all, shorter durations. So shorter talks were more effective. Speaking slower, less words per minute, is 2 times more effective. Asking more questions. The more questions, the better. 1.5 times more effective, and make your audience laugh. So some really interesting insights that he managed to get out of effectively mining the text out of these transcripts and running some machine learning models and everything over the top of it. So some really interesting results there, and a really great presentation as well. So well done, Eduardo, for that. Okay, so here are a few more slides from his presentation showing, interestingly enough, some of the best and some of the worst presentations. So in fact, you actually have a few people like Jeff Bezos and some of the guys from Google and everything who actually gave not so great TED Talks, which is kind of interesting. And then up the top here, you have some really great talks from some people like Stephen Hawking. And well, I guess you can't really speak that fast. And this really interesting presentation on why you should love statistics actually ranked very, very highly. So definitely a video that I'm going to check out and watch there too. So the name of his presentation is Creating Fair Machine Learning Models with Generative Adversarial Networks. Now, if you haven't heard of general adversarial networks, or GANs, before, basically what they are is a couple of machine learning models that are working with each other to make each other better. Now, a few examples of this, you've probably seen some things in the news, like deep fakes, where you have things like videos of President Obama, which are actually computer generated. And so you can get President Obama to say anything you like. So here is a little picture of that here. Okay. So it can make it look like somebody's saying something that they haven't said. So kind of creepy, kind of scary, but at the same time, some really pretty incredible technology. Now, besides making fake videos, what are some of the other kind of purposes and applications of this? Some things include like style replication. So you could take something like a painting from Picasso or something like that, replicate that style, feed that into the computer, and then go off and tell it to create a different piece of artwork with different parameters, but using that same type of style. And this has the opportunity to massively bring down the cost of things like computer generated graphics for movies and games and all kinds of things like that. So some pretty incredible technology, and just its ability to make really lifelike images is pretty amazing. So anyway, coming back to this presentation, actually, before I get into that, let's talk a little bit more about how this kind of works. So effectively what you have is, we already have computers which are able to recognize and classify images. So effectively you have one computer which basically goes off and generates an image, and then the second computer or machine learning model basically goes off and it takes a look at this image and tries to classify it to see if it is real or fake. It then feeds this information back to the other model, and it works to improve these pictures. And through a few cycles of this, these machine learning models start to produce images which are very, very real looking. So anyway, coming back to this presentation, this is a really interesting application of this technology. And this is really looking to see if we're able to detect a bias within our models. So one of the things that is really important now is that because all these machine learning models are coming out and they're being used to make decisions about different things, is that we don't have bias included in those models. For instance, we don't want to have, say, a gender bias or an ethnicity bias when it comes to, say, applying for different types of things. So it's definitely important that some of these features are left out of the model. They shouldn't even be included in the machine learning model in the first place. But the other part of this is that regulators also want to see that those biases haven't effectively been inferred through other attributes. So a common one is, say, the use of postcodes. So if you live in a particular postcode, then you are much more likely to have a certain number of attributes. Some of those attributes may be things like ethnicity, which could lead to bias in the systems. So by using GANs, effectively what's happening here is models are being trained with the exclusion of certain restricted features that wouldn't be permitted. And then they are being tested to see if those prohibited features could effectively be recreated from the output model, even though they weren't trained with those features in the first place. Because if you were able to infer those restricted features from your model, even if they weren't present in your model, then potentially your model could have some inferred bias in it anyway. And this is something that the regulators want to make sure that we don't end up doing. All right, so in this next talk's here by Anthony and Joel from the HMRC, which is basically the tax department in the UK. So it was really interesting. They were basically having this talk about how they were adopting R in the HMRC. So obviously a government department is a little bit slow to kind of move on things. They have lots of legacy systems which have been around for 30 years or so. They have a lot of SAS and Excel and Stata users, Stata or Stan users, and they really wanted to move to R. Why? Well, one, R is free, so it's much cheaper to use. You've got all the open source libraries and packages, a little bit more restricted in the government departments, but still they were able to consolidate the work that was done through a lot of these other tools and bring them all into a single tool, build better dashboards, get faster results, and do some really cool things there. So it's cool to see this adoption of R. A few other interesting things that I thought were worth pointing out about this presentation as well. I thought it was interesting how they talked about the use of D3. Now, just in case you guys don't know what D3 is effectively a way of building interactive web graphics using JavaScript. And it gives you a lot of control. It is very detailed, and it is also quite a bit of work. So interestingly enough, I've never actually been much of a fan of D3 just because it is so verbose. Now that does mean you get a lot more control, but something that you could maybe do in 1 to 5 lines of code in R in order to create a visualization would take you maybe 50 to 100 lines of code in a D3. So there's definitely that trade-off there. But it is a very specialized skill. And it was interesting to see that there was definitely a good amount of demand for this in the HMRC. Now, not all the developers were experienced in D3. They have like 2 dedicated developers just for this, and they would be serving quite a few of the different teams because the demand for really high quality data visualizations within the organization is there. So, something to keep in mind. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the summary of all of these great talks. If you're ever in London and want to get to a really cool meetup group, you can head to the London R meetup group hosted by Mango Solutions. I'm going to leave all the contact details for all the presenters in the notes below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.